Right, very good. Well, I could just stay in this space of connecting all day, but we definitely want to hear from our storyteller today, Beverly. So thank you again for all being here. We'll spend some time hearing from Beverly and her story and about her journey. Then we'll break out into breakout groups again a little bit later to talk about what we heard as we go through there. So a formal welcome, Beverly, personal friend and colleague. So it's great to have Beverly here. Beverly has a vast experience in the organization development, leadership development training world. She's a spacey, right? Space Coast, been
I
with NASA
am.
in different areas for quite a while over her career. So we have that in common. I'm a former spacey as well within the space, and just had a moon landing a little while ago, which is kind of cool for
I
the first
did.
50 years. So that's awesome as we go through. But Beverly's current managing partner with Design Learning. Great leadership as she brings a lot of her expertise from sales, marketing, managing the business, and then her own as she brings her full self to the work. So it's a privilege to work with her, to have her here today. She currently resides in Merritt Island, Florida, which they call the Space Coast, with her husband and two adult kids, I guess, when they choose to show back up, but they're off and about as well too. So Beverly,
That's right.
welcome to being here with us. And I think maybe I'd start off a little bit differently, just to ask you why did you choose to accept this invitation?
I've been a participant before. I've come and listened to other people share their stories, and I always walk away from those conversations with such, so it's such a gift that others have shared with me. And I'm always touched by what I hear. And um, it's funny because I'm like, I really just don't have anything to say until I don't know what I would say that anybody would truly find all that interesting. But after, talking with Maya and Jeff and having a conversation, it was interesting to be on the other side, to have the opportunity to think through what has been my journey from start to where I am now, and what has led me to where I am, because sometimes it's easy to just feel like we are here, right, and really not consider the path that got us here, and what I've learned from that. So for me, this is just a wonderful experience to think about that and honor it, and maybe it will be useful to somebody else. Maybe somebody else will find something in my story that's useful. So that's why I finally said yes.
Awesome. We're glad you did. Perfect.
Yeah, thank
All right.
you.
Maya, you want to kind of get us into the conversation?
Sure thing. And yeah, we're so glad you accepted the invitation. So great to have the captain of our ship and dear friend here with us. So, Beverly, as you think about your journey, whatever that journey may be, uh, why did you choose to be on this journey, and what brought you here?
It's such a big, broad question. And when you first start given that question, you don't even know where to start. And um, so where I started when I started thinking about it is not where I want to start today, because it's interesting. Uh, I sent an invitation to family and friends, people I thought who might want to join this and listen to my story. And I'll get a little choked up because my college roommate is here today, um, Annie Sweeney, who I love and adore. And she and I were roommates at the University of Missouri in Columbia, and both of us are journalism graduates. So we both graduated from the best J school in the nation. Go Tigers, Mizzou Raw. And we both took different paths from our university. We both graduated with journalism degrees. Annie graduated in print, and I graduated in broadcast media. And my senior year, as I was near graduating, part of the program at University of Missouri is you work in a television studio. You work in an actual NBC News affiliate. So I was working at an NBC News affiliate um, for the time, and was doing reporting and producing, and was assigned to go cover a news story. And I think it was like a fashion show at the local chamber of commerce. It wasn't anything terribly exciting, but I was going, and I was headed out with the news crew, and we were going to go do a live remote of this fashion show. Um, and on the way to the fashion show, we happened to see um, many police cars, ambulances, and fire trucks heading in a direction. And being a reporter, I said, there's something going on. So we turned around and we followed the news trucks and the fire trucks and we arrived at an older home outside of the college town, near to the college town. And what was happening was that there was carbon monoxide poisoning in the home. And so because we happened to be there, happened to be first on the air, live on the air. And if you are a young reporter, that's a big deal, right? I got quote unquote the scoop and had to return back and do follow-on stories. Well, later on that evening, unfortunately, one of those people who was pulled from the home passed away. They died tragically in the home from carbon monoxide poisoning. And the reason I share that story is because at that moment, I decided I wasn't going to pursue a career that I had just gained an education in for 4 years. Because it struck me at that moment that my quote unquote success, if you will, or my scoop, or the good news of getting on the air first, kind of ended with the death of someone. And while the two had nothing to do with each other, rationally, I recognize that. I just realized that that wasn't the kind of career that I wanted to have moving forward, where I felt like my humanity was stripped away a bit in that moment, and it just didn't feel good or right. So I made the decision not to intentionally pursue a career in broadcast journalism, and at the time said, where am I going to go? Well, my grandparents happen to live in Florida. Young college grad seems like a pretty nice place to be. I'll go to Florida. I'll live with my grandparents for a while until I figure things out. So I came to Florida, moved in with my grandparents, and got a job at Kennedy Space Center. So kind of took the first job I could get to get my foot in the door. It got lodged a little bit in the role that I had. I was in security, doing something that had nothing to do with my degree field. But eventually I moved into the learning and development function after a while. And I just had, continued to find myself slowly moving away from, or it's not slowly moving away, but I have found myself always moving towards doing something for others or doing a role that helps others in some way. And in many ways, just kind of continuing to move towards my own humanity and others as well. So, and I think that was impacted a lot by the experiences I had working in the space program, which was really cool. So I still am we call ourselves shuttle huggers, by the way. When you live here, you call yourself a shuttle hugger, because I worked for the space shuttle program for 16 years. So I'm still a huge fan, still a big fan of the program, and stayed with it for a long time. And through that experience, I met some amazing people who taught me the value of noticing people and recognizing people and lifting other people up, and how just small things, small encounters can have such a huge impact on the lives of someone that, and so I think I've sought to try and do some of that, through the course of my own career. So I kind of had to start there today just because I see Annie there on the screen, and she and I have many great memories together, and she's a dear, dear friend. So thanks for coming, Annie.
Happy to be here, Beverly. Your voice.
Now you're muted, Jeff.
Want to talk away. So you, as you answered the kind of that first piece, as far as, why'd you choose? You mentioned what we call some places along the way, milestones. Other ones in addition that maybe have caused you to pause, good way, bad way, or what are some other things, impactful milestones along your journey that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think, when you work in an industry that I worked in for so long, 16 years working in NASA's space shuttle program, it's very much a process-centric environment. It has to be, right? Because everything that we were doing could lead to a potential accident or disaster if we didn't do it well, if we didn't follow protocol, procedure, rules and regulations. So it was very much an environment that was geared towards that. But within that, and all of us were kind of designed, we had to work that way. But within that, there were people and moments that showed that you can bring a different part of yourself to that. So one of those happened like almost immediately when I started working there. When you are, it was the Space Shuttle Atlantis was parked in the Vehicle Assembly Building. So for those of you who don't know what the Vehicle Assembly Building, it's the tall building with the American flag and the NASA meatball on the side where they would stack the Space Shuttle orbiter onto the external tank and the solid rocket boosters. Well, my job at the time was to sit outside the orbiter and make sure that everything and everyone that went in came back out again. It was a terribly complex job, but it was important because anything left flying around in there while in space could create an accident. So I was there on a Sunday afternoon, second shift around 5:30, sitting in the middle of this cavernous building, and I see two men walking towards me in blue suits. And a blue suit, when you're there on the Space Center, means it's an astronaut. So it was my very first astronaut encounter, and I was just beside myself. I was so excited. And up walked the two astronauts, one of which was going to be the pilot on the first mission of Atlantis, and his name was Mike McCauley. And Mike, before he went and walked around and went into the orbiter, he stood there for a good 15 minutes and just chatted with me, asked me about who I was, where I came from, what was my story, tried to understand why a girl from Oklahoma went to school at the University of Missouri, got a degree in journalism, and was a security girl at the security checker at outside the Atlantis. And he just asked a lot of questions and knew my name, and we visited, and he went around the orbiter and then he left. And then from that point forward, Mike left the astronaut corps eventually and became our CEO of our company, United Space Alliance. And Mike had a unique gift of that. Every single time I saw him or encountered him and ran into him at any point from that point forward, he would come over to me, he would say hello, he remembered my name, which to me was just remarkable that a person of, an astronaut, a CEO would remember my name. He remembered my name and then made sure that he introduced me to anybody and everyone in the room that he thought would be useful for me to know. And it just struck me that someone that, took the time not only to talk to me, to visit with me, to get to know me as a person, but then remembered me and remembered my story and then championed for me from that point forward, to me was just incredibly powerful. And it just showed such great humility and grace that in many ways I felt like I really not only needed to be respectful of that, but wanted to live up to all of the hype that he was sharing with everyone. So the good news is, before it was all said and done, I was leading the training program for the Space Shuttle program team. Mike was my boss. And I happened to be, I got to be one of the youngest managers there doing the work. And I think if I were to call Mike today and say, hey, I've got this project, would you help? He'd say yes. He's just that kind of guy. So I'm always, to me, that was just such a pivotal moment in helping me understand the gift of giving someone time and the gift of remembering you and remembering your story and sharing it with others.
Seems like that shaped your leadership style now, I mean, knowing you. So as you continue on this journey with leadership, bringing, heart center, and really uplifting the gifts of others around you, what continues to surprise you?
I think I continue to be surprised by how often people will share that they've not been given the opportunity to do things, or given the grace of someone else lifting them up, or it's not hard, right? I mean, it's not hard to create space for others to shine. And I think sometimes when you do that for other people, there's a reticence to step into that light that's kind of being provided to you. And I think it makes me a little sad, to be honest, that there's not enough of that. And so I'm always surprised when people are hesitant to take those opportunities to step forward. And my hope is that by giving them a space to do that, right? By giving them a space to try and to be supportive, that they will step forward and learn that they have a gift that they didn't know that they had. I was just blessed with so many people in my own professional career who saw gifts and talents in me that I did not see in myself, who would push me and nudge me to try new and different things and explore aspects of my skills and just who I am, that I probably wouldn't have done if I hadn't had a gentle nudge somewhere along the way. And so, there's a couple of leaders along the way who I would be very happy to see today and hug them and say thank you for that. So I think the truest thing that we can do as leaders in organizations is create space to let other people share their gifts and talents. And that means taking a backseat, and that means not having to be the one, front and center. And I guess it's good I don't necessarily like being front and center, so it makes it easier for me to do that. But I get great joy in seeing other people just live and shine brightly, whether it's my kids, who today I'm just, so terribly proud of, both of who have chosen pathways and careers where they'll be serving others in their career, to all of my family, my friends, my colleagues here at DL. I just love seeing people do great things and being there. I like being the greatest fan on the sideline, and I think the world needs a lot more of that.
Wonderful. Yeah, maybe a little more specific thing as far as your introduction to Peter and his work and how that journey has been going on. So I know as you've been exposed to
Yeah.
it a while back and you've been on a journey yourself on how that's impacting in your work in your life. What would you like to say about that part?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. So once I left the program, I went and worked for another author. Her name is Beverly Kay. So some of you may know Beverly Kay. She's written a lot of books: Love 'Em or Lose 'Em, Love It, Don't Leave It, Help Them Grow or Watch Them Go. So all around career development and employee engagement and retention. And there I had the grace and the privilege of working with another colleague who's on this call today, Rosalind Sagos. So she's on the call. So she was part of that journey as well. But when I left career systems, I was kind of in a space. My father had just passed away. And it was a very tough time because he lived out of state, and I had a lot of work to do to manage that. And I was just had a very difficult time with the loss of my dad. So I stepped away from working full time and just kind of meandered into doing consultative work. Saw a post that said, hey, they're looking for flawless consultants. Are you interested? And I applied, and they said, hey, come on in. Let's do a class. And I had always been a fan of Peter and flawless consulting. But I only knew of Peter really from his flawless consulting work because of my kind of process-centric, mindset. I can rally around flawless consulting like nobody else. I can get it. You've got a step-by-step process. There's things I can check the box around. And so for me, flawless was an easy fit. And it's funny, that's where I first met Jeff, was at the certification of the flawless consulting, a new batch of flawless consulting facilitators. And I went and I felt terribly out of place at first. And I even had a conversation with Jeff when it was all said and done and said, I don't know if I'm a good fit. I don't know if I'm in the right place. Because so many people who were there knew of Peter's other works, knew of community, knew of abundant community, knew of the other part of Peter's world, which he is so passionate about, of which I hadn't discovered yet. So for me, it was a tenuous kind of gentle introduction into a space that I'd known kind of for myself, and a place that I've been residing, without knowing that there's a whole population of people that were there too. So for me, it was just somewhat overwhelming. But when you get to talk to Peter on a regular basis, like I do, which is a blessing, there's days, I don't walk away from a conversation. I have a notebook, and he laughs at me about this. So every time I talk to Peter, the notebook comes out, and I'm constantly writing down things that Peter said, and not because of any other reason, that just it always is a moment that speaks to me in a way that nothing else quite ever does. So I've been really blessed to be able to have this journey, and then see how we can take what Peter does and what he says and his work, and more importantly, just the ideas to a much bigger audience than we ever have. And so that's, for me, is a real fire in my belly, is to ensure that I don't know why more people don't know about it, and I wish more people did. So working to try and bring not just his story, but our stories, the collective of everyone here, so that that they see that there's something else, right? And especially leaders in organizations today, having worked in a corporate environment for many years, having consulted in corporate environments, I think that there's a real thirst for this kind of thinking. Peter calls it leader as convener. You can call it whatever you want, even flawless consulting around the power of building relationships and collaboration and what that looks like. The world of work needs that more than ever. And so I'm excited to be a part of helping it get out there as far and as fast as we can.
Wonderful. Yeah, so just to follow up on that, Beverly, as you've moved a little bit into the other parts of Peter and the convening portion, more specifically community, what are you learning? What's surprising? Anything about that piece of it? As you've said, it's very important. So what have you picked up from that aspect?
I think the simplicity, there's just great beauty in the simplicity, and there's great, it is a deprogramming in many ways for a lot of people to get out of what we've always known, the usual, person standing at the front of the room, with the PowerPoint charts, or the classroom style. I'm going to talk, you listen, then we're going to have a conversation. And there's, for people who know that, right, who've known that for a good amount of their years in the world of work, to do something different can be uncomfortable and challenging. It has been, I'll be very honest, it was for me at first. And it's only through the experiences of being able to get together in small groups and in conversations, and to see the gifts that emerge from that, just like we heard at the beginning of this conversation today, how people can connect with each other so quickly, that you see that there is a different way to show up with each other. And it's a way that actually brings more to the space than following an agenda, right? Because you're bringing the whole person to the space, and they're completely invested, they're fully present. And with that has great potential and opportunity for great thinking and great ideas. And it's always amazing, if you use one of Peter's questions from the 6 conversations, from community, the dialogue that emerges from those, what people say, and how people are compelled to think differently. So I think whether it's us as a DL organization having those conversations and seeing where it leads us, or, whether you're in a small organization, a large one, or within the community, bringing people together to invite them into a space in a different way. At first, they may look at you like, what's happening? And I'm not sure about this, but it works. And I was recently with my son, who's in seminary, actually, and he's teaching a catechism class for a bunch of 12 and 13-year-olds. And he's struggling to get them engaged in conversation. And I said, well, how about instead of you start your class next time, how about you break them up into small groups and have them have a conversation around this question? And he looked at me suspiciously, and I said, and then come back and then just ask, what struck you? He looked at me suspiciously. Well, he tried it. And he came back and said, you know what, Mom, it worked. They were engaged. They actually kind of they had a new life to them in the dialogue and the conversation. So it's exciting when you can see those moments happen.
Beautiful. I love that. And it's great because it works on every age, even
Works on
even though-
every age, even 12 and 13-year-olds who don't want to be in a room.
yeah. So we'll move back into breakout rooms shortly, but just to close, Beverly, you know, I heard you say you hope to help bring this work out into the world, but for your own journey, what's some hope that you have for the future? Or what do you want to see in the future?
I think for me, one of the things that's become very clear, the more I know about, the more I read, the more I understand, is just how convicted I am around what I haven't done. And, I would say that when you're in the kind of world that I am and in the business that I'm in, it's very common for us to get a job and we leave town, right? I travel a lot. I go to a different location. I've traveled a lot over the years. I go somewhere, I'm there, do a little bit of work, and then I come home. And there's not a lot of responsibility or accountability with that and I have noticed that recently I just feel more convicted to do more of what I do for others in other places here for myself and for the people that are closest to me. So my own community. Um, and with that, accepting that there'll be some responsibility and accountability that comes with that. So there's a little fear, I'll be on, fear in stepping out in that regard. But I do think that it's important to not be just an anonymous member of my community anymore. And it's okay if somebody knows who I am in my neighborhood beyond just my initial neighbors, right? And it's easy to be fearful with the environment that we're in today to step out and be noticed and be noted, because people may say or not like what you're saying or what you like. And so for me, I want to be more present in my own world, and not just present in others.
Beautiful. Love it, Beverly. Thanks. All kinds of other questions could move into, but why don't we give a little bit of a break and we'll move into our next breakout team. We'll do different breakout groups, so you'll be with some new friends or old friends, depending on how the randomness of this piece gets going together. So, key question here is, as you listen to Beverly, what struck you about her story?